the Russian-backed militants began the war in eastern Ukraine 3 years ago. On April 6, 2014, pro-Russian activists seized the Donetsk Regional State Administration building. At the time, the demoralized Ukrainian security services were unable to control the angry crowds, while the neglected military could not respond to the armed conflict that followed. These events were mirrored in both Donetsk and Luhansk. A group of Russians and locals seized the security service building. The journalist Alexei Falin was an eyewitness to when a group of Russians and locals seized an SPU building. He worked for a Luhansk TV channel back then. Everything started from the moment when the militants came to security service building under the guise of being peaceful protesters. Then they began their assault, neutralized the police, and in the end, they seized the building. On the morning of March 7th, the people who occupied the Donetsk Regional State Administration building proclaimed the Donetsk People's Republic. The first councilmen were a motley collection of men in tracksuits, pensioners, and people in various states of inebriation. Together, they voted for Donbas's sovereignty. Later, the same process repeated itself in Luhansk. They seized a security service building, and then we found ourselves in the LNR. They proclaimed themselves to be leaders even though nobody had ever heard of them before. In spite of that, they became the heads of military units with combat experience. They had a militarized structure, weapons. Of course, they claimed that they seized the weapons in the security service building, but I suspect they already had them. The local authorities provided assistance to the invaders. However, that doesn't mean that the people of Luhansk supported their politicians. Importantly, the proclamation of the Republic was only made to look like a spontaneous decision. In fact, it was a well-planned operation starting from the rallies on forward. Many people didn't even understand what they were supporting. They didn't understand what they wanted. They did not understand how to achieve it. But they wanted to protest. It was a senseless and ruthless rebellion. They were afraid of mythical fascists. The most popular slogan was, 20 Banderas from Maidan will come and tell us how to live our lives. For a few days, the Donetsk People's Republic did not extend far beyond the walls of the administration building. But on April 12th, a group of militants, headed by Igor Stolkov, entered Slovyansk. This was the beginning of the war in the east of Ukraine. Pro-Russian forces started seizing other cities and towns in Donbas using the same strategy. Begin slogans, rallies, and get a riled-up crowd. Then come the barricades and armed groups assaulting government buildings. In order to protect their people and stop the spread of the militants' area of control, Ukraine began the anti-terrorist operation. Russian support, from arms to training to direct support from Russian shock troops, have meant this could not be done quickly or easily. And so, the war continues.